All right, so we got a Reddit post of the day. And the post for today is inherited some money, need advice. And I'm gonna read this. Like as always, I'm gonna put the actual post itself on the video so that way you can read along with me. But this post is from Dolby Shock. And Dolby Shock says, I just inherited roughly $60,000 from my dad after he passed away. Totally unexpected. Up until now, I've been a broke college student with no support from my family. No mother, dad always out of the picture. I graduated high school and was homeless for a bit until my high school counselor helped me out. I enlisted in the Army National Guard and I'm currently a college student trying to get my degree. Guys, what the heck do I do with my money? I'm grateful, but I don't know the first thing about investing. Just budgeting, pay off my car, start investing in stocks, save for a house. Side note, I do work and I make about $3,000 monthly while going to school. So, pretty unique situation, pretty interesting situation. Just inherited some money. What should you do? Now, I see a lot of posts online, a lot of people that would just say, oh, buy real estate, do this, do this. And I do think that a lot of people on the internet have no idea what money even is. They don't understand how money works. They say stupid things. They talk about just the worst ways to use money. Now, I'll say this. As someone that started off with like no money at all, pretty much started working a job and I was making about $10,000 a year, a little bit over $10,000 a year, which is nothing. In the wealthiest county in the country, making nothing to where I am now, which I'm not rich, but I'm doing well for myself. And I feel like the steps for me to get there did not rely on like a lot of mentors. I didn't have a lot of help from outside forces. I didn't have parents just giving me money. I didn't have any uncles or aunts or cousins that could stay with me, help me liquidate my expenses, chip in, any of that stuff. I didn't have any of that stuff. Most people I know that have money, they had those things. I've met so many people that are rich or have money, but then you kind of do a little digging and you find that their dad was wealthy and their dad gave them money and they bought a house with the money that their dad gave them. And then they're trying to like give advice as if they know anything about money. It's like your dad gave you your money. You don't know anything about money. Or you have people that maybe had cousins that lived with them and helped them like really liquidate expenses. They all like work together, which is fine. That's what you should do. But it's the easier path than what I had to go through. So a lot of things I had to go through, you kind of figure out by trial and error. If you have to get into a bind, if you get into any legal issues, you have to figure out all these things by yourself with no help, no outside forces, and you kind of wing it and you hope that it works out and that you don't go to jail or get bankrupt or anything like that. So I think I'm in a slightly better position to answer this question than I think most people on the internet would be in. Now, as far as inheriting $60,000, there's a few ways to do this. Obviously, with most things, I do not know this person personally. I don't know his personal situation. I don't know the way he spends money. I don't know his habits. I don't know his perspectives on money. So it's tough. I don't even know what area he lives in. And I say this because all of these factors would dramatically impact the strategy I would suggest. Now, if it were me in this situation and if I inherited $60,000 randomly, I think what I would do is if I had any kind of consumer debt, like credit cards or things like that, I would pay that off with the $60,000. And hopefully it's not a ton. So if it's about less than $10,000, I pay that off. And the reason why I would pay this off first is because having a good credit score is kind of like a life hack. If you understand how credit works, it's a bit of a life hack because what it lets you do is it lets you leverage other people's money. And in this situation, the other people are banks. It lets you leverage their money to buy assets that you normally could not purchase. If you want to buy a car, and I'm using a car because that's something that more people are familiar with, although I do not recommend buying a car because it's a liability, although it can be used as an asset, technically it's a liability. But if you were to buy a car, the better your credit score, the better the rates to buy the car. So the less money you have to spend on the car to get access to the car. You can extrapolate this to anything. If you want to buy a house, obviously the better your credit score is, the cheaper it is to get the house, the better the rates for you to get the house, which means that you can gain access to a house, which could help you get wealthier in the grand scheme of things with less money. It won't make you broke, pretty much, when it comes down to it. So first thing I would do, I would eliminate consumer debt as best as I can. Some things like if you have student loan debts, if they're super high, I wouldn't pay them all off because I think having cash liquid is beneficial, but I wouldn't let a high balance remain. if you have $20,000, I don't think I'd put 20,000 of the 60,000 into student loans. I think I'd pay off like 5,000, and then slowly, because he makes 3,000, I'd slowly try to chip away at, or I shouldn't say slowly, I'd quickly try to chip away at the student loans with your own money that you're making from your job, not from this money. But with this money, what I would personally do, once I've kind of taken care of most of the main debts to get my credit score up to a good level, it doesn't need to be super high. A lot of people shoot for like 800, unnecessary. High 700s, mid 700s is good enough for most of the perks that come with having a good credit score. Once the credit score is up high enough, then I would look for things to invest in. And I think the simplest thing to invest in, my personal opinion, I'm biased, is real estate. Now, as a real estate agent, of course, I'm going to say this. You can always call me, contact me if you're if you're in a similar situation, or if you just have money and you're trying to figure out the best way to invest it. Give me a call, shoot me an email. I can kind of walk you through this. I'm able to practice in all 50 states, so I can help you with this, and I can help connect you with a real estate agent in your area to help you buy a house. But this is what I would do. I would take some of the money and I would start looking for properties. I would not look for properties to just live in. I would look for properties around the $100,000 to $300,000 price point that you can live in for a year, but also rent out simultaneously. This is what they call house hacking in real estate. So if I were in this person's position, I'd find a house, let's say it's $250,000, let's say it has multiple bedrooms or at least a basement. You live on the upper floor, you rent out the basement. Or if you can even convert the house in some ways to make it better for you, I would do that. Convert it so you can have roommates. Either way, what your goal in doing this is you want to rent out the place so that way your tenants are paying for your mortgage. And the reason why I say shoot for something about 100K to 300K is because anything under 100K, in my personal experience, is probably not going to be a great property. And you probably can't get a good mortgage for it anyway. And you don't want to be buying things in all cash because you want to have some liquidity, in my personal opinion. $100,000 to $300,000 means that the mortgage is probably not going to be super high. Depending on interest rates and depending on your credit, which is why your credit score needs to be good, you could probably get a mortgage for about, I'm estimating, and these are rough estimates, $1,000 to say $2,000. This is a super rough estimate. It heavily depends on other factors, but let's say, for example, let's say $1,000 to $2,000 for your monthly mortgage. If you were to get in a roommate or a tenant or tenants that could pay off that $2,000, or at the very least minimize how much you're paying, you are still sitting on a big chunk of that $60,000 because only a small piece of that $60,000 is going toward a down payment for the house, down payment, home inspections, things like that. It's not too much. Again, this is why the house needs to be relatively cheap, relatively inexpensive. I'm not saying cheap is in bad condition. I'm saying inexpensive relative to the upper margins of what a house could cost. Then once you do that, you live in it for about a year. Once you live in it for a year, you can then move from that house and buy another house, get a mortgage, and do the exact same thing. Does that make sense? Now, when you buy your first property, so when you do an FHA loan, pretty much you can get, the down payment can be about 2 to 5%. Let's say in this example, 5%. With a 5% down payment, you're not taking all that $60,000. You're taking a small portion of it. Once you live in a house for about a year, you can move out and use an FHA loan again. Does that make sense? Now, ideally, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds and make this overcomplicated, but ideally, if you live in an area where there are multiplexes, I would buy a multiplex because a multiplex achieves the same purpose at a better rate, I would say. Because if you have a single family house, that's fine, but the issue is that someone's in your more personal space, and unless you can manage to make, say, for example, your basement have a kitchen and have a living space where someone doesn't need to come upstairs to the main level, you have to share the main level. You need, they have to have a kitchen, things like that. They don't have to, but they should have a kitchen and things like that. However, if you live in an area where there are multiplexes, you can simply buy, say, for example, a fourplex with an FHA loan, have 3 people live in the other 3 units, and you can live in your own unit by yourself, which is a better way to go about it because in this situation, you're still using an FHA loan, so it's still a low down payment. You're still buying a property at a relatively low cost. It could be you could literally buy a fourplex at the exact same price as some single family houses, but you're getting more bang for your buck because now you're getting 3 people paying rent, paying for your mortgage, instead of maybe just one person or maybe even 2 people. And there's a bit of separation between you and the tenants because they're not living in the same house as you. So it's a better situation. And then of course, if you buy multiple units, again, same thing. After a year, I would just move out, have 4 people paying for that mortgage. And then by that point, you can use a commercial loan to buy a new investment property, or you can buy another property that you want to live in, whatever you want to do. This is what I would recommend up front, because this is a way for you to take the $60,000 and get it making money for you. Now, in the grand scheme of things, because you're not going to use all $60,000 on just this one house, what I would do is I would slowly over time build a nest egg, put an account aside where you're taking your $3,000 that you're hopefully saving because you're house hacking. I'd put that into an account. And I'd continue to keep buying real estate using this general method. Of course, the FHA loan, you can't buy infinite houses with it. At some point, you're gonna have to use a commercial loan, which is gonna be about 20%, but that's fine. If you're in a relatively inexpensive area, this still shouldn't be unobtainable. You should still be able to buy properties this way. What I would do from that point, I would try to take the extra money and start a business with it. I would either start a business or invest in a business, but I think starting a business is a better way to go about this. And the reason why I say starting a business is a better way to go about this is because, one, you're gonna learn certain experiences from starting a business than if you try to invest in a business. If you invest directly with your money, there's a high chance you'll probably just blow it and lose it all. If you start a business, you're gonna learn how businesses operate from the ground up. And you probably don't have to use a lot of your capital to do so. And because you have money saved up, there's not much stress and there's not much risk. And assuming you've kept your expenses low, you could theoretically not have to work a normal job. You could be allowing your tenants to just pay for your lifestyle. And I say lifestyle, some people hear lifestyle, they think like balling out. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, if you used to make $3,000 a month and your total expenses per month are say like $1,500, and your tenants total, because they pay off the mortgage and everything else, maybe you net $1,500 or $2,000, it depends on your comfort level, you could just live off of the rental income. And this is better for you because you have a nest egg, because you have money set aside from this original $60,000 that you still have. You have money you saved up because your tenant should have been paying off your original first mortgage, which means that you weren't paying for mortgage, which means you have more money that's liquid. So you've added to the original, let's say 40K, because you spent some on the down payment. You've added some money to that leftover 40K. And you have money that you could theoretically put into building a business. In the grand scheme of things, I think a business is a better investment than real estate, because I say this because a business is skills. To build a business means you have a certain skill set. And a skill set can always be used in other areas. If you have the skill set of speaking, or if you have the skill set of selling, or if you have the skill set of building systems or funnels or whatever it is, depends on the business, you can always rebuild a similar business with that exact same skill set. You can always improve the skill set, or you can always take the skill set you know and learn adjacent skill sets. Hopefully that makes sense. You can always learn things that are similar to what you originally learned. But I think with real estate, the downside is if you just buy properties, and if you're just making money off the cash flow of the properties, that works only as long as you can find more properties. Does that make sense? Which means you have to have money coming in, which is fine. You'll have money from the rental income, but it's not quite the same as having a business. I think with a business, you can always start at zero and you can make infinite amounts of money. With real estate, you're kind of capped because you can't just start charging super high rents to people for no reason. And you can't always find a good property overnight that's going to cash flow the way you want it to. It's a little bit trickier with real estate. I think with business, you get a little bit more flexibility and more things that you can do in the grand scheme of things. So that's what I would personally do. And that's just the kind of essentials. Start a business with the remaining amount after you've purchased a few properties. You won't have to worry about a job at that point, hopefully. You'll have a nest egg, so you won't have to be stressed out about making money from the business. I think that's what kills people when they start getting stressed out about making money from their business. They feel like they need to push things that maybe aren't ethical, and then they start to get into that scam territory. When you have a nest egg, you don't have to rush to make money. You have money set aside. If you want to use money for marketing, you certainly could, although I'd use it sparingly, because it's very easy to market your way to bankruptcy, so to speak. You think you're putting money into good marketing, when in reality, you're just pissing money out the wind. You're wasting money. You're not using it effectively. Marketing in itself is a skill, and not everyone has that skill set. Even business owners don't necessarily have that. So yeah, that's my strategy. That's what I would do. Not only would you keep most of the 60,000, you'd probably, after maybe a couple years, build up past that 60,000, have a solid nest egg, have some liquid capital. Then at some point, if you do build a business, and if it starts to succeed, even like slightly, you have more freedom to do more things that you want. You have more freedom to just kind of travel if you want to travel. You have more freedom to put money back into the business without wasting all of your money to grow the business faster if you wanted to. You have more money to buy more real estate if you wanted to. You have more freedom that way. That's my personal perspective. So hopefully this makes sense. Hopefully you got a lot out of this video. If you did, please click the like button. I would appreciate it a lot. It helps with the algorithm. Please hit the subscribe button as well if you like the video. My goal is to get to 1,000 subscribers in the next few months, if possible. And the only way I can do this is if you click the subscribe button. But I will see you. Also, if you disagree with anything or if you have your own insights, please leave them below in the comments. I'm always curious to see what other people think, if they agree or if they disagree. But until the next video, I will see you in the next video. Peace out.